Hi everybody, New Jersey forensic accountant Robert Bonavito. Today we're going to discuss how to sabotage your company. And this is based on a manual put out by the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, in 1944, which later became the CIA. They released this sabotage manual during World War II, and the purpose of the manual was to disrupt the enemy's supply lines and things like that behind enemy lines. If you want to take a copy of the whole manual, you can go look at this. You just could go to our Google Drive and you can download the whole manual. It's really interesting to read. And again, it's not about making bombs or anything. It's just how to confuse and slow down production behind the lines, mainly for the average person. Again, it wasn't meant for spies or soldiers. It's just meant for ordinary workers, managers, and things like that. And the manual is really interesting to read. Again, this is in 1944, and it's just simple sabotage techniques. Now, a lot of these techniques we talk about are in most companies I go into, even if we're not doing a forensic analysis or looking for fraud. So it's pretty interesting. And again, the OSS, the idea was that the ordinary citizen could cripple companies. And think about it. This is a manual to help cripple companies behind enemy lines. And we see this stuff in companies all the time when we go into them. Some of them are indicators of fraud, but some of them are just totally incompetent. Okay, and here's the methods. And let me say that I see this in a lot of companies where they're not committing fraud. They're just incompetent, like I said. But a lot of times we use this in forensic accounting. We find things, and if I see something that makes us a little nervous, we'll dig deeper. And a lot of times we will find fraud, employee theft, or some type of wrongdoing. Now, here's the first thing the manual suggests. Hold endless meetings, debate everything, and never reach a decision. Right? This is what they're telling managers to do behind the lines, and this is interesting because we see it all the time, right? Insist on written procedures for everything. I'm thinking of actual people and companies when I read these. Everything has to be written and approved. Refer every issue to a committee. We all know people that do this and make no decisions. Misplace or delay material. I recently had a situation with like 5 or 6 lawyers. We were trying to complete this document, and these are different law firms, so they all had put their 2 cents in, and all this stuff was happening constantly. Everything was put to debate. There was endless meetings, and we just kept on until we actually were able to get this document through. But it was very, very difficult, and I think they read this manual. Follow every rule literally, right? If you did everything literally, how much would really get done? Hire, promote the least capable employees. Now, this we see a lot, right? And, these employees are like lightning rods within the company because they're so incompetent. And I think that's why they stay. I mean, it's just like this, this one person is constantly the lightning rod. And so what they're using them for, I guess they keep him in the company because everything that goes wrong gets blamed on him. Most of the time he did do it, but just in case. And I think every company needs this kind of person. So you hire, promote the least capable employees. Again, this is what they recommend in World War II, but this happens all the time. Complaining gossip, right? We all have that around the water cooler. And because I go into thousands and thousands of companies, I can spot this stuff right away. And every time I read one of these, I'm thinking of 5 or 6 companies. Slow down your work just a little, right? I mean, this is a union tactic. You watch some of these union jobs and we're like looking at it, and everything is slowed down deliberately. And what would take a person, let's say, a day to do, will take them a month. I remember on the way to work, they were widening this road to my office, and obviously there was a union construction company doing the work on it, and it took I guess 2 or 3 years to widen this road, and it must have cost like $10 or $20 million. I think they built the Empire State Building faster than they widened the road. Well, what's interesting, that at the end of this road there was a McDonald's, obviously a privately held company. And one day I went past the McDonald's and it was totally just, it was gone. One day, they came in, they demolished it, they took everything away, and then within a month, 1 month, this business, a beautiful store, replaced it with everything was new and paved, and it was fully staffed and functioning within 30 days. Meanwhile, this construction project to widen the road took 3 years, and it was just like amazing, the difference between how government works and how private industry works. But in a lot of companies, they do slow down things, but I think some of these bigger companies do have, like McDonald's can really go in and do things pretty quickly. Okay, now, so the point is that in many companies it does happen unintentionally, right? It's just poor communication, bureaucratic overload, or value compliance over creativity. And so we see all this happening in companies, and it's just hilarious for me because I don't work at these companies, so I'm not suffering because of it. But I go in there and I see like endless meetings and crossing T's where they don't need to cross, and doing things that are not important, gossiping, and it happens all the time. But now, how do you tell just bad business practices from fraud? Okay, and so even though these people, like I said, are draining profits, it can happen in real life, and it does lead to fraud. So I've seen lots of sabotaging companies, and attempts to cover up fraud. So what happens is, maybe they sabotage the payroll system. They can't find the books, or they can't find invoices, or things disappear, and they slow down things. So once you see this, you're thinking to yourself, okay, it's just incompetence, or is this fraud? And so we had one interesting case where a company had a bookkeeper who created lots of chaos in the company. The bookkeeper was very, very competent, okay? And when you have a small business, doing 20 or 30 or $40 million, and you have a competent bookkeeper, a lot of times the owners will rely heavily on them. And this was the situation here because they're busy doing a lot of the things, and the bookkeeper, okay, you can do the payroll. Okay, you can, stamp my name on the checks. Okay, you can hire the people. You can set out the invoices. And meanwhile, they're doing more and more and more. They're becoming, because they're competent, they can get things done. But when you want something, they can't do it. And what was happening was there was a lot of things that didn't make sense in the company. Like, they were very, very busy. This is the main problem. And yet there was the cash flow was horrible. Like, they were so busy, but then they would have problems making payroll or problems paying invoices. And the owner's like, I don't understand it. We're busier than we ever have. Our jobs are profitable. Where's the money going? And, he would talk to the bookkeeper. He would just use these sabotage techniques, delay, lose things. He hired incompetent people in the company. All this to throw them off track. So they called our firm up and said, listen, we're doing great. We're making money. We don't understand where the money's going. Now, they didn't hire us to find fraud. They hired us to just explain to him where the money's going and what's happening. And so we went in there, and, I remember I had to call the bookkeeper. And it went to voicemail, and then I got one of those messages saying that, the voicemail was full. And this usually is the first red flag I see. When somebody's too busy to look at their voicemail, or they don't care about their voicemail, so no one can leave messages. And so that kind of, I'm thinking to myself, okay, what's going on here? And so then we started to do a little more digging. We tried to get the payroll, which was almost impossible from him. And, he was blaming, ADP didn't do the blah, blah, blah. So finally we got the payroll records, and we look at it, and we saw his salary. Obviously, he was very competent in his job, and he did a lot of stuff for the company, but his salary was off the charts. And so I went into the owner. I said, yeah, you pay him really well. And he's like, what do you mean? And he had no idea how much the bookkeeper was making. So from there, we dug a little bit deeper, and we found out that he had his own American Express card. He had his mother on payroll, which was pretty interesting. He set up companies, like let's say they were sending checks to a metal company in Arizona. He set up a company with a very similar name, and he would write checks to that company so they looked as if they were really invoices that, they would get the invoices and pay him. He stole money 10 or 12 different ways. And we actually did go to court and testify, and he did go to prison. And something that, because of all the sabotage I saw from him, it just made us dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And we uncovered everything, like I said. And we did testify. He did go to jail. And the owner understood why. He had no money because this bookkeeper was stealing money every which way he could. And it's because, he had no one overlooking him. And he gave the bookkeeper a stamp for his name. He never looked at the payroll. He just trusted him to do everything. So sabotage is always interesting to see, but it helps also when you're doing forensic accounting. Now, we had another one. We don't usually testify in malpractice cases against accountants or anything like that. It's just not something we do, unless there's really they're stealing money or something like that. And we had a client that was getting divorced, and we went in there, and this woman had lots of companies, very, very well off, and her husband, he was more or less a stay-at-home dad. And so she needed a lot of help unraveling things. And again, the CPA was really, you'd call him up. He's like, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I'm like, well, everybody's busy, but you're talking about it. It just made me nervous that there's something wrong. And then obviously I'd call his, his phone, his cell phone. It would go to voicemail. It's like, sorry, there's no room here. And so those two things, I'm like, okay. Every time I talk to this guy, he rushes me off the phone because he's so busy, so busy. And so we started to do some really dig in deeper. And this CPA was pretty interesting because he was selling a lot of stuff to his clients, or he'd bring in insurance people to sell them policies or investments. And a lot of the stuff he sold was total crap. And we found out he was getting kickbacks. Like this one, he would sell these whole life policies, and he would get a check for $2 million. And, the whole life company these are, massive checks. These are massive insurance policies to cover, these estate issues. Total, the fees were just crazy. And the one thing that really got us a little bit, obviously it was crazy, but he set up this one policy, he said, for the client, and she would mail him $125,000 every month, and he would, pay the premium with that, supposedly. So what we did was we got copies of the checks, and what we saw was he was signing those checks and depositing in his own account. There was no policy. He was doing all kinds of crazy things like this. And so, with this case here, we gave him a choice. Pay all the money back or go to jail. He couldn't pay the money back, so he went to jail too. And so this sabotage stuff really does work. The total theft he had was over $6 million. Okay, so here's some things to look for. With sabotage, it's real. Again, voicemails are always full. Too busy. Check their garbage can, okay? What we found out, when you look at someone's garbage can at the end of the day and it's completely empty, it probably means they're doing no work. Even though we have a lot of paperless activity, this still works, okay? Usually the person with the fullest garbage can is doing the most work. There's lots of meetings with no results. Managers always say, let me wait for more data. And employees who follow every rule but accomplish nothing. So, lose documents, emails. If you see these things here, these are indications that maybe this person is just incompetent, but they also could be covering up fraud. Listen, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash the like button. Thanks for listening. Robert Bonavito.